Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Welcome to The Money Factor, our program that focuses on local business and personal finance topics. I'm Richard Naylor, your host. A recent survey has found that 50% of executives would have chosen a different field if they had had a chance to go back there and do it again. And if we add that to the number of people who, for reasons beyond their control, have to look for another job, we come up with quite a few people who will be thinking about or making a career change. Our guest today is Thomas Denham from Careers and Transitions. Let's meet him and we'll talk about some of these issues. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Careers and Transitions, it's an unusual name, and I'd like to find out a little bit about how you came up with it.
Sure. I've been a career counselor for 16 years, and I've worked mostly in colleges and universities. But 12 years ago, I was involved in a consulting project with some other career counselors, and we formed this group called Careers in Progress. We eventually went off on our way, and I liked the Careers in Progress name, but I didn't want to take it out of respect for the group, so I called it Careers in Transition. And since then, I've had a lot of clients that have called me and said, you know what, my career's in transition. So it's been a good name that really identifies what the company does.
The very word transition, and that's the focus here.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, career is what it's all about, but transition implies more than just, I'm going to take the same job at another company.
Your career is always in transition. We as people, as ourselves, are always in transition. We're always evolving. So a career is not stagnant. It's not a point in time. It happens over time. And we're always transitioning in our career. Sometimes it's minor steps, but sometimes it's major transformations like changing careers, or it could be as minor as getting new responsibilities at your current job.
I would assume the more interesting clients you have are really changing significantly.
Yes. Most of my clients are in mid-career. I specialize in mid-career professionals, people who are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, although I do have some clients in their 60s and their 20s. But something happens, especially in the mid-40s, when people, what I call, enter halftime. They've entered a period of reflection, and they're saying to themselves, both in their personal and professional life, is this all there is?
So it's about meaning.
It's about meaning. My younger clients are all about money. My students are about money. I want to go out, I want to get the sexy job with the name brand company, and I want to start earning some money. That's probably stems from the fact is that they don't have any money. They're walking around campus with a backpack and ripped pair of jeans, and they've been starving all these years. They want to go out and make money. But something happens in midlife where we say, is this the legacy I want to create? Is this all there is? Is this cubbyhole how I want to define my purpose in life? And what I help my clients do is try to find out what is their personal definition of success and what does meaning mean for them? Because meaning for me might not mean meaning for you. So in career development, there are 3 steps: self-assessment, career exploration, and then job search. And most people are not doing the first 2, self-assessment and career exploration.
So I would assume they start out with, I don't feel very good. And
I asked them,
the simplest.
I asked them, on a satisfaction level, where would you be? 1 being the worst, and 10 being the best. And sometimes people will say 3.
So that's almost depression.
Okay, that's, yes. No, but professionally. Yeah, I mean, it could be depression. I asked them on a quit index, 1 being my ideal job, I'll never quit, and 10 being the worst possible situation, I'm going to quit tomorrow, where are you? I had somebody today that said she was a 10. Now that person should have called me about 6 months ago before the barometer or the thermostat got so high that she is
10
now...
was bad.
10 was bad.
I had that
10 was bad.
backwards.
10 is the worst.
Okay.
So when a client should really call me when they're 5 or 6, because there's a little grumbling, a little dissatisfaction, but that gives you time to make some plans, because career development is like losing weight. You don't lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks unless you're unhealthy about it.
And there's a lot of trauma that could be involved, a lot of dangers, actually. I meant to say something real, not just psychological. Your family depends on you. How do you take that leap and drag somebody else over that, not hopefully not a precipice, but that little thing that you have to jump over to get to the other side?
That's right. I mean, it's much like mountain climbing. It gets steep after a while, and you have two choices. You can either go to the summit or you can go back to your tent. And if you go to the summit, the view is better and you get to have lunch. But if you go back to the tent, you're nothing ventured, nothing gained. My 20-year-old college students, if the worst thing that happens, they don't have a job, they can go home with live with folks, and then they can regroup.
Right. But
But if you're in your 30s, 40s, or 50s, you may be married, you may have children, you may have a house, you may have 2 cars in the driveway, you may be maxed out with your credit card, and you're 2 paychecks away from going into bankruptcy. So one of the advice I give my clients is you need to save up for a job change. And people don't typically do that. You need to have 1 year's cash reserve in your bank account in case you're laid off, downsize. We live in an era of downsizing, and people have to plan for that.
it's a little bit like the stepping from one boat to another. If you were in a canoe, you wouldn't just stand up and move quickly because the boat's going to go and you're going to fall over.
Right.
So you really need to get a solid base.
We see all these advertisements for planning your financial future, planning for retirement. We need to be more deliberate about our career planning. We have to go from passenger to driver. And a lot of people are passengers. They're parking themselves in a particular job or a career, and then then something happens. You get a new boss, new responsibilities. You get shipped out, relocated to Dallas. You don't want to go to Dallas because your kids are in high school, and you don't want to change high schools. So really, in midlife, the first thing we need to do is take time out and do self-assessment, which is the most difficult part of this process because it gets to the core of people's skills, values, and interests. And we don't do enough time to reflect on, is this really my destiny?
And maybe how do you go into finding out what's really wrong? Because you might not be happy, but it might not be your profession or your skill set that needs changing. Maybe it's just the people around you.
Right. Well, one of the things that I do with my clients is I go through a list of job change factors. Is it the particular job? Is it the particular industry that you're in? Is it your boss? Is it the location? Is it your commute? Is it salary and benefits? Is it flexibility? Is it your coworkers? Is it politics? You know, what are the factors for you to make a decision whether to stay put, then there are advantages and disadvantages of that, or changing, and there are advantages and disadvantages. So I have them fill out a matrix of what are the advantages of moving, what are the disadvantages, what are the advantages of staying put, what are the alternatives. So
now this kind of follow-in question is I guess difficult for everybody to ask, but certainly once in a while it's not the job, it's not any of those other things, it's them. How would you?
Right, so oftentimes I give out these self-assessment inventories like the Strong, the Campbell, the Myers-Briggs, and there's a mismatch between who they are as a person and what they're doing. And they're often making choices about their career based on things that they really don't think are important. So we have a tendency in American culture to go after money, and then we pick better jobs for more money,
Right.
so that we can have more stuff. When it's really not about collecting stuff, it's more about what am I doing on a daily basis. I tell my clients, you are what you do all day long. And if you are not doing something that you feel passionate about, get another job. Come up with a strategy that is going to get you from here to there. But what happens is there's this other thing in the middle called fear, and fear has an acronym: false evidence appearing real.
That might take a while to soak through.
Yeah, false evidence appearing real. So you're over here, and then there's this suspension bridge in the middle, and you start to go on the suspension bridge, and it's not very stable. So you run back, you stay put, stay safe, don't go outside the box.
Right.
But you never get to the other side to become the person that you should become
And
without
I
taking that
almost
risk.
want to add from my own experience, there's a certain discomfort involved in growth, and we have to learn to go through that.
We only grow in crisis. We only grow in crisis.
That's radical.
It is radical, but if you think about it, when I went from high school to college, that was a really radical change. That was, I mean, I wouldn't consider it a crisis, but you can think of it in that same way. I had rarely been gone from home. I went to school at St. Lawrence University, 4.5 hours away, and then I have to room with somebody I don't even know, and my mom's not there to tuck me in at night and give me a hug. But
there's this blackness out there. I was there too. You don't know what's going to happen, and you know you have to feed yourself.
I have to study by myself, and nobody's going to take attendance in class. But then you look back at graduation, you look back at those 4 years, and those are the best 4 years of your life.
Do you think you have poor eyesight looking backwards?
Probably where I wear glasses.
We talked a little bit about age. Do you think there's a point at which it's the most difficult? Is that the 40 to 50 that you were mentioning? Because I could see at 60, you know, what do you have to lose? You could maybe retire and work at the same time.
Right.
But your salary is probably as high as it's going to get if you really want to change much.
Well, you know, there is no question that age discrimination exists. We shouldn't even be asking the question, does age discrimination exist? Because it does. And it affects many people as we get more seasoned in our careers. But I look at somebody like John Egan, who is 77 years old.
Really? I don't even notice that.
And you know, he's been head of the dormitory authority in the airport and Renaissance Corporation. Now he's got a new job with Elliott Spitzer, and this guy's 77 years old. I don't even think he wants a job. I mean, when you get to 77, don't you want to spend time with your grandkids? But he gets...
Maybe it's not a job anymore.
Well, that's exactly right, because he feels passionate about it. Work is coming to him without him probably even requesting it. He got tapped for this opportunity, I'm assuming these things, because people see something in him that they want. Experienced. He's a seasoned professional. But he also has energy and enthusiasm at 77. And I know a lot of people who at 45 don't have the energy and enthusiasm that he has. You look at somebody like Joe Bruno. He's into his 70s too. A lot of energy and enthusiasm.
Right.
You look at Marv Levy, who is the vice president, general manager of the Buffalo Bills, and he's in his 80s. So the question for me is, are you a performer? Are you aggressive? Do you get results? Do you infect other people with energy and enthusiasm? If you do that, work comes to you, regardless of what your age is.
Now, your customers, they must fit in all kinds of ranges. Some of them
Absolutely.
are not in those all good virtue categories.
Right, I have to do a lot of reprogramming. But as a career counselor, I do the assessment, I find out what their skills, their values, their interests are, I do a lot of counseling, and then what I do is I help them explore their options, and I try to help them come up with 4 types of jobs. And those are the ideal job, the realistic job,
Okay.
the safety, and then the wild card. The ideal is the gold medal. That's the job that you always want to go for. You know, you don't settle for silver, which is the backup plan. Realistically, we have to think about this in a practical way. You know, maybe you can't get the gold ideal job. You know, you want to be in nanotechnology.
Maybe a writer.
A writer. I want to be a
Really hard.
filmmaker or something like that. Well, you know, you don't have any experience in that, or you're not willing to make the sacrifices to get that particular job. Then you have the realistic job. That's the job you can probably get. And then you have the safety. That's the job that you must take. So it's the jobs I want to take, the jobs I need to take, and the job I must take.
Now, how do you lay out a time limit here? There have been stories of people looking for this breakthrough for 40 years, and they don't find it.
Before I tell you about that, let me tell you about the wild card.
Okay.
The wild
Good.
card is the 4th one. That gives the career counselor an out. So that's the one that falls into the client's lap that they weren't expecting, but indeed it is a very good job. So
Now, is that an accident happening?
that's an accident.
Okay.
That's something that just, you know, somebody calls you up and says, oh, I hear you were looking for a position. We don't have exactly what you're looking for, but we have this job over here. They take the job, and it turns out to be a complete surprise, and they absolutely love it.
Now, it's a surprise that they got it, or a surprise that they like it?
One, maybe surprised that they got it, and 2, they're surprised that they were actually doing that type of work, because it doesn't fit into this mold of the ideal, the
They hadn't
realistic.
thought about that.
Hadn't thought about it. You know, it just kind of happened.
Right.
So the other approach, the ideal, the realistic, and the safety, that's a very strategic, planned approach. This is the job that just happens.
Well, that
sometimes.
makes it easy. Somebody just
Yeah.
solves your problems.
Right, and it does happen. So you were asking about...
Well, the time thing. Now, if you want to plan so that you're keeping your options open, but not burning your bridges, and
Right.
not endangering your welfare or your family's welfare, which is probably why you have the options for taking the best job and the second and the third. But in terms of time, how much do you give yourself? Because, you know, if I'm desperate, I might think, I got to get out of here, and you take something that's really not right at all.
Well, it's kind of like I'm the doctor and I say, you know, you have been smoking and you have been not working out, and now you have emphysema and you're going to die in 3 weeks. You know, obviously you've created this problem for yourself, and sometimes it's obvious people can't get out of these jams. They either take a job that they don't want because they need the money and they're unhappy. The question for me is, what did you learn from this process? And that's why I say the clients have to call me when they're a 5 or 6 and not a 9.
Okay.
Because I need to know when I'm doing the intake interview of them what their situation is. I look at their financial picture. I have a client that's 53 that's got very few assets. And so that person doesn't have the luxury of just quitting their job and taking 3, 6, 9 months off to, you know, find other opportunities. And also, they've got to be thinking about retirement planning. So it all depends on the individual client and what they're bringing to the table. It depends on their education.
It's really hard to say then.
There's no formula.
Right.
Because each person is different. Each person needs a program that's going to be absolutely tailored to their own needs.
And I guess just because you've taken something that's not your ideal job doesn't mean that now you seal off all
you
the...
park yourself and just stay there. You know, that's really the key for me is, even if you're in your realistic job, the question is, what are you doing incrementally to get to the gold medal, to the ideal? Now, for me, for example, I was running my consulting business on the side, part-time. I didn't even really want to do it, but people came to me and said, will you critique my resume, my cover letter, will you help me, will you career counsel me? And so I started meeting people in public libraries, but I had the safety of my full-time job at Siena. But my business kept growing and growing and growing to the point where I couldn't...
Took over.
It took over. It took a life of its own. So I left the security of Siena, but as an entrepreneur, I have other things that I really like, which is the freedom and flexibility to pick up my daughter at school at 3 o'clock. I have a lot more time with her. I don't have a performance evaluation. The only performance evaluation I have is my clients that
And that
pay
goes
my
back
fee.
to knowing yourself.
It goes back to knowing yourself and the things that you want. And that's what I find a lot people in their 30s and 40s and 50s, especially in the 40s and 50s, they want more freedom, creativity, flexibility, and they want to call the shots. And that means entrepreneurship for many of them. So my advice would be to do something on the side that you feel passionate about.
Kind of pilot study.
Pilot study it. You have nothing to lose. I was talking to a woman yesterday. She's 38 years old. She's a great editor. I said, why don't you get a DBA, doing business as, through the county, get a business card, come up with a name, get a website, and see what the heck happens. Talk to, you know, carry your business cards around, tell everyone that you edit things, get a couple gigs, which will lead to more gigs, and before you know it, you will have more work than you can handle.
And that really solves the problem of somebody doing something desperate that is somewhat fatal in terms of their economics, where I got to get out of this, and then you go for something totally, hopefully not something like these 800 numbers where you get rich quick.
Right.
Hopefully something a little more realistic than that. But even if it's realistic, it may not work out. So this really allows you to maintain your maturity and test the waters.
That's right. Self-assessment, what I try to do is peel back the layers of the onion, peel back the layers of the self, and get to the core of what that passion is.
Is this psychology or is this counseling?
It's career counseling, but it's psychologically based and psychological in nature. And it's getting back, because we pick jobs for oftentimes the wrong reasons, for money and for benefits, and then we stay in that job for security because we ourselves are insecure in our own selves. And we want the government or the company to take care of us. And we live in an era of downsizing, and we can't have that anymore. So what I see is a lot of people who have these passions, and when you're doing your passion, it doesn't seem like work. Or in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you go from, there's physiological, there is safety, love, self-esteem, and the top of the pyramid is self-actualization. And that's what I see a lot of times with people starting their own businesses. They're getting to the top, and work is only fun now.
Now, do you see people that maybe in the beginning they don't really think that there is a passion?
I do have
but
clients
that they
that
find
have no passion.
something.
That they're
And they
passionate.
never find a passion.
Some clients never search for it. Some clients really, truly don't have a passion. But I do a lot of probing, and oftentimes I can really get to the core. And many times, clients are asking me, please give me permission to do what I know what to do. And that's what these
So that's where
a lot of these self-assessment tests are just confirming things that they already know about themselves. And they need somebody other than their spouse or their family to say, you go for it.
Now, are there fine-grained tests that you think people could trust? Okay, yes, I might be more extrovert, more introvert. Maybe I should be an entrepreneur. Maybe I should be working for someone else. But are there fine-grained things like I should be going into computers or something like engineering, or why aren't you in sales because everybody's going to understand what you're saying?
Well, it's kind of like getting a date to the junior prom. I help them come up with those 4 types of jobs, but I actually ask them after we do the assessments, which gives them a lot of job options, to come up with the top 10. Because you can't do all of these jobs. And then I ask them to rank them in order. So as a good career counselor will say, okay, here's number 1. I will not tell you that you can't do number 1. I will tell you these are the 6 things that you have to do in order to get this job. Are you willing to make the sacrifice to do that? And if they say no, you go down to number 2.
Okay.
That's the decision-making model. So for example, if somebody comes in and says, I've always wanted to be a college professor. I've always wanted to teach history.
And I have a BA in
And I have a BA.
psychology.
Yeah, right. And then I say to them, are you willing to get a PhD? I'm finishing up my own dissertation. It's taken me 5.5 years. And I'll say, you know, a dissertation could take 5 to 7, 9 years. Are you willing to make that sacrifice? Oh, no. Okay.
Next.
What about getting a master's in teaching from St. Rose or Union or UAlbany or Sage, which will take you much shorter, but you won't get to work with college students, you work with high school students. Yeah, that sounds a little bit more what I'd like to do.
And then perhaps if they really get into it, they would find that
They could go to the next level.
they like to
So-
write articles and dissertations. Who knows?
Right. I mean, if that person really wants to teach history, you're exactly right. They could be writing for a history magazine. They could be writing a history column in the Spotlight. They could give history tours. There's all these other subsidiaries that can go off from that. They could be tutoring. You could start another side business tutoring in history. You could be giving book talks. But see, you have to think outside the box, and that's what I try to do for my clients, is get them out of this very narrow mindset of I can't, I won't, I shouldn't, I don't, to look at the possibilities that could happen.
And I guess there are some people that, because they don't worry about it and they do what's needed, that's really the second part, and it's vital, doing what really has to be done to make something happen.
Right.
That they succeed more easily.
I'm the OEO of Careers in Transition, only executive officer. And as a result, I'm the vice president of marketing, I'm the vice president of sales, I'm the vice president of technology, I am the vice president
That's
of
a lot of paychecks.
finance. Oh, well, you know, it's a great job. I love my boss. He's very nice to me. And I'm also the secretary. If that phone goes off, I don't have anyone else to answer it other than me. So that's the other part of being an entrepreneur that's so exciting, is that you just do it. You don't have to ask anyone. There's no politics. You just go ahead and do it. At the same time, when people see that you're energetic and enthusiastic and you're just doing what needs to be done, people want a piece of that. And so that's why I get speaking engagements and I get paid to speak, and I'm doing a talk for 1,200 10th graders at Schenectady County Community College. And I'm going to be paid for that.
Well, that's a
And
good
that
time.
usually leads to another gig and that kind of thing. So there's so many possibilities. But again, we have got to get our heads out of the sand and think positively about ourselves and the possibilities for the life that we can create.
Now, you mentioned the kids, and I think it might be worth just going into that just a little bit, because, okay, there's a lot of 40s and 50-year-olds who've decided they're in life crisis for one reason or another, and that's important. But gosh, if we could have figured out something about ourselves when we were in high school and then followed through, wouldn't life be much easier?
Right. Well, let me ask
So
you
what
this.
can you do?
How many internships did you do in high school?
None.
How many in college?
Had no idea what I was doing.
Did you have any internships in college?
Libraries, I guess.
Did you do some internships?
Oh, and
Yeah.
well, I did some French teaching.
Okay. When I was in college, only about 1% of college students did an internship. That number today is around 70%. And students today are doing multiple internships. So if I was to give advice to parents and students, is internships, internships, internships.
Okay.
That is the way to go. Because in this career development model of self-assessment, career exploration, and job search, in that career exploration stage, there are 3 things you do. And that is you research careers, you network and talk to people who are in those careers, and then the third thing is you do an internship, which gives you that experience, which helps you form a better decision about the type of career. Internships are like dating. You do an internship for 3, 6, 9 months, sometimes a year, and then you dump it. And then you go on to your next internship with a better focus of what you would like to do. Some internships you may love, others you hate, but there's no internships that's bad, even the ones that you hate. I did an internship in New York State government and found it very challenging, but I learned that that's not what I wanted to get into. So it helps ground students who are spending time in the classroom or too much time in front of MTV and the internet who formulate these ideas about specific careers. It helps them get them more grounded about the decision making. So I would say start as early as high school, and in college I would make sure that they have 1 internship per year.
Wow.
So by the time they graduate, they do 4 internships. My dissertation is on internship programs in schools of business, so I'm a big convert to this kind of thing. If people did more internships, I would have fewer clients because they'd be more satisfied
But like
with
a
their
good
careers.
teacher, you say, well, my job is to make myself unnecessary.
That's right. That's right. If the best student for me would be the one that came in senior year that had 3 or 4 internships. All they need is a little polish.
Right.
They tend to be more mature. They also tend to get higher salaries. And they also, for retention purposes, tend to stay on jobs longer.
And I would think the experience of working with, could I say real people?
People outside the ivory tower.
Well, and also people who are involved in real work.
That's right.
Who are doing something that makes a difference in a community.
Well, a classic example is accounting. Students learn accounting in the classroom. Then they go to work for an accounting firm, and then they get to see what real accounting is all about. So they're taking that knowledge. It's really the...
And they might say, I hate this.
That's exactly right. It's the marriage of the classroom and the workplace together. It's learning plus earning at the same time. So they're taking that knowledge from the classroom, bringing it into the work environment. But then what they do is they take the work environment and they bring it back into the classroom. And that's why that model, it's called experiential learning model, that's why this model is so powerful, and it's the direction that many schools are going into. Internship programs are very, very big at schools, and schools are marketing themselves with their internship programs.
I'm glad we spent a little time on that, because I think that as important as it sounds, people really need to hear that and let it soak in. We're running out of time. We covered maybe 40s and 50s. We have the 3 steps of the model. Any advice for what someone should bring even to a counselor? Because I assume that whatever position they're in, that's where they have to start.
The first thing that they should realize is this is a process. If you're 45 years old, it's going to take more than a half an hour or an hour with a counselor to get out of this situation. First, you have to be open to the process, open to feedback, and you have to commit. Like losing weight. If you're trying to lose 20 pounds, it took you more than 2 weeks to put on the 20 pounds, it's going to take more than 2 weeks to get out of it. So you have to make a commitment, and you have to be disciplined. You should bring a copy of your resume for the career counselor to look at to get a sense of your background. The career counselor should do an intake to get to know you at least in the first session. Then the assessments can help. That's your homework. Okay. I look at career development as like taking a class. When people pay my fee, it's like it's tuition, and I expect it up front so so they don't drop the course, you know, and that way they do stay committed. Sometimes they reschedule along the way, and that's fine because life gets in the way. They should be open to feedback. They should be open to exploring their options. The nice thing about working with a career counselor is they're objective, they're positive, they're enthusiastic, they're encouraging. And that's when you are involving your spouse, your family, your friends, they're not trained, and they often have biased opinions about what particular careers.
They could be afraid.
It could be afraid. What do you mean you're changing your job? What do you mean you're changing your career? What's
That
going to happen to
check
us?
is fine for us.
What's going to happen to our house in Guilderland? You know,
Right.
it can be a very frightening process. But we only grow in crisis. We only grow with change. So if we just park ourselves and just go on this trajectory and just keep going, we don't become the person that we should become. I'm not saying that we should job hop in any way, but
And we should take care of our financial house so that nobody suffers
you've
with
got to
us.
take care of your faith, your finances, your friends, fitness, your future career, and further learning.
And all those Mavlovian things that are at the bottom, we can't forget those.
You can't, yeah, I mean, you got to take care of your physiological needs, safety, love, self-esteem. When you repair self-esteem, that's when you get to self-actualization, because self-esteem is really about I can or I can't do something.
So I guess that's a positive note to end on.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being with us.
Okay, thank you for having me.
And I want to thank everybody for watching and invite you to the next show. Hope you have a great week. Take care.
Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.